we're summing it up now. I think we've studied, like I said, we've studied all the points, I think. So we're just going to have to go over it and read it through and translate. So if you have the text in front of you, we're in the final paragraph of the text. V'zehu she'omar Rabbi Eliezer. So he goes back now to answer the questions that begun the entire mimer. If you recall, the first question, the main question, was about the midrash saying that when you put on tefillin, when a Jew puts on tefillin, then by putting on tefillin, we are yotzei zayin. First, the midrash says that that Am Yisrael, the neshamas, we say to Hashem that we would want to learn Torah day and night. We want we want to seriously or effortly learn Torah day and night. But in turn, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, he says to us that, but we can't, again, einanu pnai, the phrase we use is that we don't have, so that's, again, this wording here now, we're going to try and explain a little bit better than what we studied the first time. But the wording is einanu pnai, which would simply literally mean we don't have time. So I want to learn Torah all day, but I don't have time. But the word pnai doesn't mean time necessarily, it means availability. I lack the availability to learn Torah all day long. So that was the original midrash we mentioned in the very beginning of the Maimer. That we all say to Hashem, all of the Jewish people say to Hashem, we want to be learning Torah all day long, but we lack the availability. We're not available. Einanu pnai. So it's explicitly, that phrase einanu pnai is explicitly a psychological phrase. That I lack the mental availability. And also, it could also mean, and it does also mean that I lack time. But again, I lack time, and when you say pnai, you simply mean I lack availability. Just like the word availability means more a psychological thing than just technically I don't have time. So same thing here, that's the phrase. Now, in light of what we've studied, well, if you recall, when we started the Maimer, I said that when we get to the end of the Maimer, we'll also be able to explain not only the answer, but also the question itself. And the Midrash says this is simply the Maimer is looking to explain how learning Tefillin, Kadosh Baruch Hu's answer to our yearning to be learning Torah day and night, is that he says to us, Hashem, put on Tefillin. And by putting on Tefillin, it says if you're learning Torah day and night. Ma'aleh ani, as far as I'm concerned, it's as if you're learning Torah day and night. That's what the Midrash says. Simply, the topic of the Maimer is to understand the answer. How is Tefillin something that is parallel to learning Torah day and night? But now that we've explained all the structure here, then we can understand the question itself as well. What does it mean that we say to Hashem, all of us say to Hashem, that we want to learn Torah day and night? So if simply you want to learn Torah day and night, it's Leon, but not every Jew is completely. If you'd ask him, what is it that you want? Not every Jew would simply say, I want to learn Torah day and night. Now, in light of what he explained here, then we can understand, what does it mean? What is this yearning in our souls to be learning Torah day and night? So what was the general explanation here? We explained that the uniqueness of Torah is that Torah is moichin, and learning Torah day and night is learning Torah in our reality, in all of my midas, which is my reality. So we'll explain that a little bit better. and this is what we're asking for. This is also the point of the entire Maimer. So this is what we'll have to. I mean, in the midst of studying here, so we've explained the uniqueness of mitzvahs. We ran back and forth between a few different mashalim, different allegories, like an awake body, a sleeping body, attention, a lack of attention. The last allegory we used was like a father and a child, which, as we mentioned, this is a very, very basic allegory in Kabbalah and Chassidut, to allegorize the mind and the heart. The relationship between the mind and the heart is like the relationship of parents and children. That's even the most archetype phrases used for mind and heart in Kabbalah is Abba ve'ima, Chochmah and Binah, father and mother, and the midot are their offspring, what's bred by your mind. Your contemplation breeds your emotion. So the most basic allegory in Kabbalah for intellect is parents, chokhmah v'bina, ava v'ima, and the most basic allegory for the heart, for an emotional attribute, is an offspring of those parents. Like what comes of contemplation, the result, what's bred, what's born from your contemplation. So therefore we use this allegory, that was the final allegory we used, in order to try and allegorize the phenomena he's discussing here. On the one hand, he says that our reality is like the deeds of Hashem, Maasei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But on the other hand, it's also like we are his children. These are all classic Jewish idioms. But when you study in Chassidus, it's very important to be very precise. What exactly is every idiom idiomizing? I don't know if you can say that. What exactly does every mashal, what is it looking to express? Which element of the topic is being expressed in each mashal? So therefore the simplest mashal of reality, of our reality, our existence, is that we are Hashem's deeds, Maaseh Shamai V'aretz, Olam HaAsiyah, the world of action, Hashem's actions. Our existence is Hashem existing us, as we studied in Shar Echud V'Emunah in length, and this is the simplest idiom in Chassidus. Here we want to be able to take a mashal that will express this very specific point of what happens when you learn Torah. How learning Torah is, the phrase he uses is hamshachat hamuchin b'midot, the appearance of the intellect in the heart. That a person's reality manages, not just manages, I mean also within my deeds, like we said, we contemplate on the difference between mitzvahs and reality without mitzvahs, which is like me doing something offhand, and I'm not set and revealed, where my actions aren't managing to express my will. So when reality is Hashem's action. So when reality doesn't express his will, then that's like a person just, sleeping. That was his allegory, a sleeping person. That all of his actions, I know he scratches his head while he's sleeping, he doesn't express himself. But when we do mitzvahs in the world, then again, we are Hashem's deeds, his actions. So when we do mitzvahs, then it's him managing to express himself internally in his actions. So it's like me doing something, managing in my words and my expressions to express myself internally. So when a Jew, this is why, like we said in the beginning of the, this is why when a Jew puts on tefillin, that's called that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting on tefillin, because again, it's as if our reality is his doings, and when we do mitzvahs, then he's doing what he wants to be doing. When we don't do mitzvahs, then he's like asleep. He's doing things that are external to him. So in a sense, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ability to express himself in his deeds depends on his deeds cooperating. So our willingness, our doing of the mitzvahs is actually HaKadosh Baruch Hu's managing to do his mitzvah. Nonetheless, both, either whether we're doing mitzvahs or not, it's all relatively external to him. As we explained, his doings are the doings of his heart, of his midot, of the portion or the part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu which is relating outwards. When he manages to express himself well, then when we do mitzvahs, then reality is annulled and expressing his internal expression outwards. And when we don't do mitzvahs, then it's just it's an external expression outwards. But anyway, both sides of reality are always only a manifestation of what's called in Kabbalah Zayin Tachtonot, the lower seven emanations, the heart and downwards. Torah, as we explained, is not at all HaKadosh Baruch Hu's expression outwards. Torah is is the way Hashem is between himself. It's like his thoughts in of himself. Just like in the psychological, that there's my emotional attributes, which is what I project outwards, how I relate to others. And there's my intellectual aspects, which is just how I relate, how I reveal myself in of myself. My interaction with others manifests my relation to others. but my revelation to myself isn't dependent or manifested by relating to others. It exists in of itself. So, and adraba, like we even pointed, very often others bother me. If I could just be quiet and within myself and secluded, then it's even easier to contemplate. Contemplation, intellectual contemplation, because it's one's revelation to himself, it's even enhanced by the lacking of someone else. Where the heart is the exact opposite. When there's an else, then the heart arises. And before there's someone else, the heart isn't relevant. It has no reality. My relation to others. Same thing here. Reality is a manifestation, the doing of Hashem's relation to others, what He relates to others. But what He is in of Himself isn't related in the creation. When we learn Torah, then we reveal within the creation and within His deeds, within His actualized relation to others, we reveal Himself as He is within Himself. In order to allegorize this phenomena, we used the allegory of parents and children. That the difference in how parents see their children and how children see themselves or their parents. The allegory we use is that when a parent sees his child, he sees him as an extension of himself. Now, also here we can notice, this is what we're going to read now in the last portion of the Maimer, that there are actually two stages in how you experience your children. When your children are young, then they're more similar to your deeds, to your doings, that are annulled to you and express you, but are, again, it's other than yourself. It's something you do outwards. When your children grow up, then they manifest you the way you are towards yourself. Like they're not just they're not just annulled to you. They're not just an expression of you. They are you, as we'll see. So the difference between a young child, an infant, to a grown person, where usually the point, like the most explicit point of growing up, is when your child becomes a parent. When your child becomes a parent, then he's grown, he's big. But as we'll see now, this is the point of the Maimer. Being bar mitzvah is like the intermediate point of time between being a child and being big, and being a parent. So you're half a parent, you're half big, as we'll explain. And he'll go on to explain that this is the uniqueness of tefillin. The mitzvahs are similar to an infant. Torah is similar to a grown child, a parent, where the child himself becomes a parent. And tefillin are in between. They're bar mitzvah. It's where you're no longer a child, but you're not yet a parent. You're capable of parenting. You can breathe physically. You can give birth. You have the capacity to be a parent, but you haven't manifested it yet. It's a potential. This is what bar mitzvah means, and this is exactly the content of tefillin, as we'll explain. So let's just try to deepen our understanding of that allegory, which I think all the ins and outs we've studied along the past few weeks, but we'll try to sharpen the understanding now, to understand the culmination of the Ma'amar. We'll start with how we explained it before. When a parent looks at his child, then he again simply sees him as part of himself. Even in halacha, braka davua, that's the expression we mentioned many times, that a child is an extension or a limb of his parent. But still, there's a difference in how you experience your children when they're young and when they're old. And each one has, you could say each one is superior to the other in a different aspect. In light of what he's saying in this mimer, then it's much, much more superior when the child grows up. But if we try to meditate and contemplate on the allegory, we'll see it's not so simple. And this understanding is like trying to express the uniqueness of Torah and mitzvahs. So Be'emet, there's a lot of Chassidus explaining how there's a side to here, and there's a side to here. There's a side where mitzvahs are more exaltant, and there's a side where Torah is more exaltant. Each one could be. So same thing here. When do my children express me more? So the word of this Maimer is to say that they express me more when they're grown-ups. But it's not so simple, because if we study a different Maimer about mitzvahs, then it would very easily be phrased the other way around. The mitzvahs are more exalted than Torah. And that a young child expresses you more than a grown child. And maybe that's even in the allegories, maybe that makes more sense. So we'll use this very, very human psychological allegory to express that. A young child is mamash physically an extension of yourself. Also, there's a lot of technical dependency. But also, the meaning of your child expressing you is simply that he's a null to you. He does what you say to a certain extent. But he's like a limb. This is exactly how we were phrasing the annulment of mitzvahs, of reality when you do mitzvahs. When a Jew does mitzvahs, then the physical reality is expressing what Hashem wants. It's annulled, it's bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's like a body to a soul. Just like your body is annulled to your soul, when you do mitzvahs, first of all, just like your body is annulled to your soul, the same way HaKadosh Baruch Hu, reality, the physical reality is like his actions, which are annulled to him. They're just an expression of him. And here like we mentioned, you can see it in two ways. You could say that reality is annulled to Hashem like a sleeping body, and then it's only expressing something very superficial. So much so that he's not even apparent within his body. But when you do mitzvahs, that's like an awake body, where a person is doing what he wants. He's expressing in his deeds his internal self. But both of these layers are both expressing the unity of reality with Hashem as being something annulled. That reality is annulled to Hashem. It's bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's something else than Hashem. Like we explained, that this is all expressing how Hashem relates outwards. Saying reality expresses Hashem is still saying that it's something other than Hashem that's annulled to Hashem. In the words of Kabbalah, this is called Ihu ve'garmo yichad. This is how Hashem is one with his vessels. That the vessels are, when they're annulled, when they're completely annulled to Hashem, they're a chariot. That's another very famous phrase, like we say about our forefathers. We're studying now in the Parsha, that the Avot are a merkava. They're a chariot to Hashem. What does that mean? That their entire being, their physical existence, expressed nothing but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like a chariot, a person who's riding on a chariot, and the chariot is annulled to him. It takes him where he wants to go. And all of the chariot's movements are only an expression of the rider. So same thing here, saying that the mitzvahs are like Hashem's limbs. A limb is like a chariot. Same thing, same allegory in Chassidus. Like a body, the body's limbs are annulled to the soul. But again, it's not the same reality. It's an annulled reality. So there's unity, but it's unifying. Hashem's unified with something additional to himself. So there's unity. It's only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but there's unity because of reality being annulled to him. The unity of the lights, Torah is not something that's annulled to Hashem. Torah is an expression of Hashem. I wouldn't say my soul is annulled to me. My body is annulled to me. My soul is me. It's just a direct expression of self. That's called Iyu v'chayoyichad. That he and his lights are one thing, not unified. It's one thing. My experience of self is just an extension, expression of my actual self. My body is like a chariot to myself, so it could be completely annulled and then it's completely unified with me. But my soul, I wouldn't say my soul is annulled and unified with me. My soul is me. That's the allegory for the unification of the lights of the Torah. These two levels are manifested in how we looked at children. That when I say my young child's annulled to me, that he's just, I see how he's just an expression of myself, but still it's like two different entities. There's me, and then I give birth to a child, and I can see how he is a manifestation of a certain aspect of myself, physically and emotionally and psychologically. Maybe he's even manifesting, he could be much more talented than me. He could be manifesting and actualizing traits that within me were completely potential. They never came into actualization. But still, nonetheless, my child, just like physically, biologically, he stems from me. Also, his soul is a manifestation, an actualization of something, of an aspect within myself. Like if you see many children, it's very, very, very fun. He was very interesting to see how each one is like an option of his parents. That his parents could be that. If you know, like if you know his parents very well, and you see their children, it's there's a like a phenomenal sensation. How how each child is like an actualization of something in the parent. The more you know the parents, the more intriguing it is to see the children. Again, it's also all the more so the way the parents themselves see their children. That each child is just me popping up in reality, part of me. But as long as the child doesn't see himself that way, child feels as he experiences himself from within, and maybe he annuls himself to his parents. He makes an effort to annul himself to his parents, but he doesn't experience himself as part of his parents. The more the child grows up, the more he's capable of understanding how his parents see him. He's capable of viewing himself the way his parents view him, as part of them. Like as we mentioned, the turning point is usually when that child himself becomes a parent. When he becomes a parent, he has a child, and he's able to experience how his own child is part of himself. That awareness, that realization enables him to realize how his parents see him as part of them. And the more he contemplates on it, the realer it becomes, so much so that he slowly but surely begins to experience himself as part of his source, as part of his parents. At this point, he no longer manifests his parents because he's an expression of them. He becomes them mamish. He becomes part of them. Like if you look at your child at that point, he's no longer a node to you. He is you. I could say it the other way around as well. I could say that when your child was very young, then he was a node to you. Explicitly, he had no independence. So his expression of you was easier to notice. And when he grew up, then he became independent. Then Adrabah, he no longer expresses you. He doesn't do what you say anymore. He's not a no. But much deeper than that is that his independence is actually a manifestation. You're also independent. So he became much more similar to you when he grew independence. So much so that he's mamish you. He's not only a null to you, he's you. Therefore, he's not a null to you. Just like you're not a null, you're a personality, you're an individual. Then when your child becomes an individual, in a sense, he becomes more reflectant of you. This is what the Mimer is saying about learning Torah. When you learn Torah in reality, when a Jew does a mitzvah, then that's like a Kadosh Baruch Hu managing to express himself. And his deeds are a note to him and expressing him. But they're not him. They're something else expressing me. It's like me doing something that expresses me. But the action isn't me. It's just a note to me. This is reality when we do mitzvahs. When we do mitzvahs, that's a Kadosh Baruch Hu doing things that express him. Reality becomes something expressing Hashem. So it's as if a Kadosh Baruch Hu is doing an action that expresses him. When we learn Torah, then reality isn't an action at all. It becomes Hashem mamish. It becomes part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chelek Eloka Mimah. Like this is the true essence of a Jew. So reality becomes Hashem mamash. It becomes a manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way he is between himself. Not just an expression, a nod to Hashem, but Hashem mamish. This is somewhat paradoxical. That's why we use why is it paradoxical? Because you're saying that there's a reality, but that reality is part of Hashem. Mamish, it's Hashem. Not just a nod to Hashem, it's mamish Hashem. So it's paradoxical. This is why we use the allegory of a parent and a child, which is a paradoxical allegory. That on the one hand, there's a child, and he's not me. And when he grows up, he even becomes less me in a sense, because he's not even a nod to me. On the other hand, he becomes much more me, because he's as independent as me. But his entire reality is just, that's called mochin b'midot. My awareness, the parent here in the allegory is the intellect. My awareness dwells in my offspring, in my heart. So if my child is capable of seeing himself, his own reality, his own independent reality, the way I see it, as nothing but part of myself, then if he sees it that way, then that itself is my awareness appearing in my offspring. That's what happens when we learn Torah as well, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's awareness of everything being part of him appears within his creations, within his offspring. When I'm aware of that, my reality is his doings. So when I'm aware of being part of him, then his awareness appears in his doings, which is me. That's called hamshachat hamochin b'midot. Why is this so valuable? So again, first of all, the allegory from parents and children express a little bit of this value. I mean, the nachis, when you say you want nachis from your kids, this is what you're saying, that you want to be able to see yourself within your children. But if we take this also to the allegory we're discussing, then I thought of an example that this is, in a sense, this is like the often experience, the common experience of learning Torah, which is the example we're learning. Let's say we study something, we study a Maimer in Chassidus. And we've discussed this many times when we, like back years ago, when we studied Perek Hashem or Tanya, more avoided the kinyanim, then we discussed very often that every true understanding is itapcha, upside down. It even became a joke amongst the group that everything's upside down. Everything you think is upside down. Everything's itapcha, 180 degrees. And one of the points we keep stressing is that that being the case, then even if in a class you've understood something, you got it. It resided well. You for a second there, you experientially viewed reality from Hashem's point of view. It settled in. That's called understanding Torah. That something settled in. An example we give for this very often is like, again, not a good example, not an avoidic example, but it helps us, is like a miracle. That when something like a miracle happens to you, Ashgacha Pratit, then it gives you a sensation where the proportions of creation flip for a second, or even for more than a second, for a few moments. Suddenly you have an experiential clarity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's centricity and how all of reality is negligible. Whereas usually our experience of reality is the opposite, where circumstances and our own yeshus is very dominant, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is back in the background, if at all. But occasionally, like you witness an immense miracle or something, then you have a realization, a clarity suddenly of how reality is the opposite. Hashem is the only true strong reality, and everything else is negligible. So using an example of a miracle is not very Chabad. It's not very Chabadnik to say that. Much more Chabad typical to say that you study, you contemplate until you chop it. And while you're studying, and this is also a very good example, like in our studies, very often this happens. We learn something very well. And while you're learning it, you get it, and you learn it again and again and again until you really, it sits, it settles in. and you're able to mamish experience your own reality the way it's seen by Hashem. But the often experience around such realizations is that 10 minutes after the class, you spring back to yourself. It dwindles. And in order to hold that state of mind, you have to constantly flip your head. This is what we say in the beginning of the Maimer here. That we say to Hashem that we want to learn Torah day and night. Halevai, we could hold that point of view constantly. But we lack availability. I'm not capable of holding the spring constantly. The second I let go, I spring back to my normal proportions. So this is called learning Torah. Saying we want to learn Torah all day and all night is saying we want to view ourselves the way we're viewed by you. We want to be able to see ourselves as part of our source, which is, again, like a child would say that he grew up and he has children, and now he understands how his parents see him, and he understands it so well that he's convinced that his true reality is as part of his parents, but he's not capable of concentrating on that all day because life is not available enough to view himself that way constantly. But he wishes he would be able to. Again, there's nothing more soothing, there's nothing more pleasurable than managing to understand myself, like to experientially view myself the way Hashem views me, as part of Him. So to be able to see myself as part of my root, this is learning Torah, where the midot, the offspring, experience themselves, they reveal the parents' awareness within themselves. So this is, if you manage to feel this, this is the content of what Chazal say, that every Jew yearns to constantly be able to view himself this way. That's called learning Torah day and night, that we want to be learning Torah all day and all night. But again, we lack availability. We're not capable. We immediately spring back to ourselves. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, but say there, it's hard for you to flip your head constantly, so put on tefillin. What's putting on tefillin? You put on tefillin, and as far as I'm concerned, Hashem says, it's as if you're learning Torah all day and all night. So this is it's a nice piece of advice, but it's also not so helpful because it only solves the problem for Hashem. What is tefillin? Tefillin is like a declaration. It's somewhat similar to what we studied in Tanya, that where is this experience also brought in Tanya? It says that this is also mochin de gadlut, mindset, a large mindset. Bringing the mind into the heart is also the state of mind of davening, of prayer. Just like it's in Torah, it's also in prayer. And in times of prayer, it says that the Beinoni views himself, Tmunat Hashem Yabit, he sees himself the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu views him, as part of himself. It's called contemplating on Gdulat Hashem, the greatness of Hashem, how all of reality is part of Hashem's self, part of Hashem's greatness. So especially myself, like experiencing myself as being part of Hashem, that's called contemplating on Hashem's greatness, how everything is part of Hashem's greatness, as we studied in Sha'ar Echut Ve'emunah. This is the experience of davening. So it says in Chassidus that, again, the Beinoni, it says in Tanya, that after you daven, when you finish davening, then this awareness, it fades away. Like we said, you spring back to yourself. But as he mentions there, if really in the morning you davened and this settled in very well, then even though you'll naturally spring back to yourself, it'll dwindle away, but it will leave a residue, an impression for the whole day. And what does this impression serve? It serves that you can easily remember that this is how things are. Again, diving back into that experience, being that way, would demand putting your entire attention into it again. And you're not available to do that. But just declaring, like remembering that this is the truth, that really this is how I am. That's what tefillin are. And Torah is diving into Hashem's point of view. Tefillin is putting Hashem's point of view on my head. It's saying that this is how it is. That really we're part of our source. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We take the content of Hashem's unity and we declare it. So it's like it's not Torah, because Torah is being there. It's mamish diving into the way Hashem sees reality. And inevitably, it's Hashem's unity is experiential. It's experientially revealed within my awareness. Tefillin it's a piece of advice that when you're not available enough to dive into it constantly, then you can put it on your head and you can declare it. This is exactly how we'll explain that this is what a bar mitzvah is. That a bar mitzvah is a child where he's not a baby anymore. Again, a baby lacks the capability to view himself as anything other than himself. He can't see himself as part of the root because he himself can't give birth. He can't be a parent, and therefore he can't conceive of his own reality as part of his source. The most he can do is like a mitzvah. He can be annulled to his parents. He can express his parents. He can be bittul, but he can't see himself as part of his parents. A grown-up who has children, that's an example for learning Torah, where you can actually view yourself, your own reality. You can conceive how your own reality is actually part of your parents, because you are a parent. So the concept is tangible to you, and so tangible that you can conceive yourself that way. You can experience your own reality as part of your parents. Bar mitzvah is exactly in between. It's where on the one hand you can conceive of this, you can understand it. It's like you're capable of giving birth, you're capable of being a parent, but you're not a parent. So you can understand, you can state that you're part of your source, but you're not in it. You're not experiencing yourself that way. That's exactly what adolescence is. You're no longer a baby, so you're no longer you're capable of understanding, of realizing yourself as part of your source. It's called you're capable of parenting, but you're not a parent. So you're not actually experiencing yourself that way. That's exactly what tefillin are. In Torah, you're actually viewing yourself as part of your source. In mitzvahs, you're something other than Hashem, but you're annulled to Hashem. Tefillin, on the one hand, it's a mitzvah. But on the other hand, it's a mitzvah that says the content of Torah. It states unity. It says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's what the mitzvah says. So it's more than a mitzvah and less than Torah. That's how he describes it.
Question?
Yes.
You might have answered it, but I didn't catch it if you did. What's the outcome of Hashem's tefillin says something different than a Jew's tefillin?
We explained that in length in one of the classes, that Hashem saying that Hashem's tefillin say something other than ours is like saying that there's how Hashem views me. What was the example we used here? That when I put on, what do my tefillin say? My tefillin say Hashem Echad. They say the unity of Hashem. And Chazal say that Hashem's tefillin say the unity of the Jewish people. My tefillin say his unity, his tefillin say my unity. What does that mean? That it's like in our allegory, it's like saying that I say I'm part of my parents. And when I say that, when I view myself as only being part of my parents, then my parents say that he is manifesting us. When I see myself as a manifestation, then they see me as manifesting. So when I say I'm part of Hashem, then Hashem says that I am the one revealing his unity. It's the same thing. It's just how I'd phrase it and how he'd phrase it. How you'd phrase it from this angle and how you'd phrase it from that angle. That's what Chazal mean when they say that when I put on tefillin, that for me it says Hashem Echad, and for Hashem that very same thing says that I'm Echad, that I'm expressing His unity. Mikam Chai Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz, that we reveal His unity in the world. So again, that's the same thing we're expressing here, but all of that is true only in tefillin, because that's what tefillin say. Not every mitzvah reveals Hashem unity in the world. Every mitzvah is a nod to Hashem. It's like a parent would say that my child is a very good child. He's such a good boy. But saying that he's not a good boy, he's me. He's managing to culminate me. He's managing to express, to bring me into reality. Like that I exist more because of my child. He's existed me. That's Torah. That's Torah explicitly, and Tefillin says that.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand it, because it does seem like an important point. I'm saying
you're broken up. So again,
I'm
broken
part
up.
of Hashem.
Well, one second.
And Hashem says a Jew is part of him. Okay, can you hear me? It could be my computer also.
I think it's better now.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, so when a Jew says, when I say I'm part of Hashem, Hashem Echad, then Hashem says what it says in Hashem's tefillin, that a Jew is part of me. But they're saying I'm Goy Echad. So we reveal. Is it true that we reveal His unity through our unity? Our unity reveals His unity. Is that what it means?
When we express Him being one, then that to Him is He expresses that we are one, because we are the ones expressing His unity. So we are one with Him, or we are one with each other. No, we are one with Him. We are an expression of His unity. When we express His unity, then we become an expression of His unity. So I'd say you're one, and then you'd say that you're an expression of my oneness, because you're saying I'm one.
Uh-huh. So I feel like I'm almost getting it, but still
that's the literal translation of the verse that Chazal say.
So Goy Echad, I think it's my understanding of Goy Echad that's the problem.
Goy Echad Ba'aretz means that we are unique people. But
it's not saying that we're all one, because that's such a big challenge, being all one. It's saying that we're unique.
It's saying the simple literal meaning is that we're unique, and the way the Rebbe reads it is that what is our uniqueness? We're unique in that we reveal Hashem's unity, in that we reveal Hashem Echad Ba'aretz, Goy Echad Ba'aretz. That is our uniqueness. Now, when is that apparent? It's apparent when we say that Hashem is one. When I say Hashem is one, that says to Hashem that I am unique in revealing His oneness. So the very same deed of me expressing His oneness, as far as He's concerned, is expressing my uniqueness. That expresses my uniqueness in that I express His oneness. That's what makes me unique. Let's say there. So again, same thing here. A child could say that he's nothing but his parents. And the parents could say that I didn't even exist, that my child is the one existing me. He's making me one. And they'd be saying it about the same, again, the parents say that about their child's statement. When the child says that all of his reality is only his parents, then the parents say that he is the one making them existing them.
It's interesting because it seems to fit together with what we've been learning for the 10 years, that when we do good, we should give Hashem credit for the good that we do.
This is exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. That our doings are actually Hashem doing. That's what our reality is. We are the doings of Hashem. And when we do good, that's Hashem managing to do good, to do what He wants. Our existence, our reality is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's managing to do good.
Mhm.
And that's the main depth of the Maimer. It's the main depth of all of Chassidus. To at the end be able to conceive that it's not, again, there's no relationship here. It's not when you do, then Hashem does. Your doings are Hashem's reality. If you do mitzvahs, then Hashem's managing to do mitzvahs. If you don't, He's not managing, because you are His doings. And if you view yourself that way, then He's managing to penetrate His deeds with His consciousness, because you are aware of yourself the way He sees you. So His entire consciousness penetrates His deeds, which are us. We are His deeds.
Interesting. It ties it all together. Very interesting.
Let's say that. So we'll try reading this inside. We've actually explained it all. So we'll read it quickly and translate it, Bezrat Hashem, I hope, and we'll manage to finish this mimer today. So I'm reading from the inside. This is what Rabbi Eliezer said.
Well, you're starting with Gimel. You're starting with Gimel.
With Gimel, yeah, the final paragraph.
Okay.
So as we just explained, this is how he explains what it means that the Jews said to Hashem that we want to learn Torah all day long. Why? Because learning Torah is experiencing the mind's point of view within the offspring, seeing myself as part of my source, which is a wonderful thing. But we have no availability. We're not capable of holding it constantly. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells them, put on tefillin. And I will consider it as if you're learning Torah all day long, because again, as far as Hashem's concerned, you're stating the obvious. If you state it, I'll consider it as if you're being it. It's like a child saying that I understand I'm part of my parents. Even if he doesn't experience his parents, see it as the truth. So as far as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concerned, putting on tefillin is just as good as learning Torah. Again, for us, it's not as good because it's not experiential. It's only a hypothetical statement. So there's two sides to this. But this is the piece of advice Hashem gives. Maybe I'll give another example for this. In halacha it says, I thought about this last night, it says that if a child is very longing, like you send your little boy off to school and he misses you all day and he cries on the phone, Mommy, Daddy, I miss you all day. So it says in halacha that there's a segula in Shabbos, there's a whole debate if you can carry this or not, that they was accustomed to tie a string to the baby's hand, to the young boy's hand, and that string will remind him of his parents. You tie the string to the boy's hand and to the father's hand, and it's a segula to soothe a child's longing to his parents. So that's reminded me very much of what's written here. Like we say to Hashem that we want to view ourselves as part of you, but we're not capable. We lack the availability. And Hashem says, put on tefillin, you tie this on your hand, on your head, and it'll remind you that really this is how I view you, that I always view you as part of me. So it's on the one hand, it's soothing. On the other hand, it's like a second grade. It's not Torah. When I learn Torah, I experience myself as part of my source. Here, it's just like a memoir. Here, it's like a residue. But for Hashem, it's real. It's there to remind me that Hashem sees me this way.
So this is the Ki'ilu. It's Ki'ilu.
That's what I'll explain in the end. This is the Ki'ilu. That's the last paragraph here. We'll get there in a second. Now we just explained, the next portion here, there would be more to discuss, but we'll just explain the Pshat. He just explains that the phrase, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Maniach Tefillin, when Hashem, the word HaKadosh Baruch Hu is referring, as we explained, to the Midot, to the lower 7 attributes, which are the root of reality, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's relationship outwards, how he relates outwards. And putting on tefillin is therefore taking the mindset and putting it on the way he relates outwards. And where does he, like the proof he brings for for this phrase, it's a very simple concept in Kabbalah. It's explained in very, very, very many places that the phrase Hakadosh Baruch Hu refers to the 7 attributes of the heart, where Kadosh is the 6 attributes of emotion, and Malchus is Hu, Baruch Hu. So where do we know this from? We know from Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, Chazal asked, how did he know when it was day, when it was night? So it says that when the angels said Kadosh, he knew it was day. And when the angels said Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Amed, he knew it was night. So you see from here that day and night is Kadosh Baruch Hu. That Kadosh and Baruch are day and night. That's how the Rebbe explains that when we say we want to learn Torah all day and all night, we mean we want the Torah to penetrate our reality, our external reality, our days and nights. Which, as we explained, also the physical days and nights are all a manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's emotional attributes. But that's just like a side point here. V'lachen hakatan shelo egia liyud gimel shana, a young child who hasn't reached 13, he's a baby still. He's pater from tefillin. Ki no nikra ish. He's not a man yet. He can't. Again, just like he can't breed, he can't give birth. He also can't conceive of himself as part of his source. Lo yesh bo ki'im mochin de katnut. He only has mochin de katnut, which is, he only has his own mindset. He can't conceive of himself being part of something other than himself. That's called a small mindset, that I can only experience myself from within myself. I can't see myself as part of a bigger picture. That's the typical mindset of a child. Again, why? Because he can't give birth. He can't see an additional reality as being part of him. Therefore, he can't see his own reality as part of his source. Rak biyoto ben yud gimel, only when he becomes 13, v'yom echad, and one day, then he becomes a man, even though he's not yet given birth, but he's capable of it. Then, by putting on tefillin, he causes Hashem to put on tefillin. He becomes part of Hashem's reality. His actions can be conceived to him as part of his own source. He can see himself as being Hashem's deeds, not only as being himself, but he can see how his own reality is an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, when he puts on tefillin, that's called Hashem putting on tefillin. But before he can see himself that way, then he doesn't need to put on tefillin. That's why a young boy doesn't put on tefillin. You don't even do chinuch. You don't even educate him to put on tefillin. All the other mitzvahs you start teaching him before bar mitzvah. But tefillin, you don't start teaching him before bar mitzvah because he lacks the capability to view himself as being part of the source, which is the content of tefillin. So now we understand that what tefillin is towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a revelation of his mindset within his deeds. It's hamshachat, it's bringing or revealing the way Hashem views reality as part of himself, revealing that within the reality itself. And that's exactly what Torah is. נמצא כי זה בחינה אחת עם התורה. ולכן אמר, קיימו מצוות תפילין ומעלה אני עליכם כאילו אתם מגיעים בתורה יום ולילה. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that by putting on tefillin, as far as he's concerned, it's as if we're learning Torah day and night. And now he says exactly that point we just mentioned.
Wait 1 second.
Yeah.
Question. But the person is not wearing tefillin the whole day, right? He could be only wearing tefillin for 10 minutes.
Okay, so simply we could say that Be'emet you should be wearing tefillin all day. That's the original mitzvah. And not only that, Rabbi Eliezer, who says this word, the Rav mentions this in one of his footnotes, that Rabbi Eliezer, who says this word, he's the one who is of the opinion that you should wear tefillin at night as well, which is not the halacha. But that's his opinion in the Gemara. But the simple explanation to that is what he just explained. That he explained that day and night mean heart and malchus. That's what day and night mean. It means we wanted to penetrate our manifested reality, our practical existence. That I can experientially, within my existing self, realize how I'm part of my source. Not just that Hashem sees me as part of him, but that I, as a manifested reality, can realize that I'm still part of him. That's called penetrating day and night, the day and night. That's the simple meaning here. That's how he explains it. That's a simple answer. ולכן אמר, קיימו מצוות תפילין, מעלה עליכם כאילו. What's the פירוש כאילו? Why is it only as if you're learning Torah? Just like we explained. כי על ידי יגיעת התורה הנמשך באוויר העולם. When you learn Torah, it's experientially that way. It's not just a declaration of how Hashem sees things. It's mamish seeing things the same way, where I see my own reality the way Hashem sees it. Not only that I understand that He sees it that way, that I see myself that way. That's only in Torah. In Tefillin, so it's not, I don't see myself the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees me. I just understand how Hashem sees me. So that's the difference between, that's why it's called Ke'ilu. It's only as if you're learning Torah. If you were learning Torah, then you'd identify with that point of view. In Tefillin, you're only declaring or understanding how Hashem sees it. That's called that if you were learning Torah, it would be experienced, it would be exposed in the air of the world, in Avir Olam, in your practical reality. By Tefillin, you're only declaring that this is how Hashem sees things. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has moichin b'midas. He can see his mindset in his creations, but his deeds themselves, me, don't experience it that way. That's what. Therefore, it's not mamish Torah. It's only as if Torah. As far as I'm concerned, it's as if you've learned Torah. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. So let's say that sums up the point. Reading it from within, the uniqueness of tefillin and of mitzvahs bichlal, and especially of Torah.